Hey guys, what are we doing today? Today we're going to talk about plagiarism, paraphrasing, and quoting. We're going to use the citation format MLA, which helps us to review websites, books, reference materials, periodicals, and interviews. So what is plagiarism? Plagiarism is taking and passing off as one's own someone else's work or ideas, and this is derived from the Latin word plagiarius, which means kidnapper or literary thief. And this comes from the Maximilian Dictionary. So anytime you use someone else's ideas, you need to cite it. If you don't, this is considered cheating. That is what plagiarism is, cheating. But you already knew that. So what, now what? Did you know this is also plagiarism? If you keep any of the same vocabulary without using quotations, even if you cite it in your text. If you keep the original order of ideas or sentence structure without quotation, even if you cite it. So that means no cutting, no pasting, and using synonyms. So if you take something off of a website and put it directly in a text that you are going to turn in, that is considered plagiarism. By not using any of your own ideas, even if the entire paper is cited at the end, that is plagiarism. If you use parenthetical citations that do not lead to the right source, so if you include something in your paper and I cannot go and find it on the internet or in a book, that is plagiarism. And lastly, by inaccurately paraphrasing or misrepresenting the author's intentions. So if you write something down and you take someone else's work and you do not represent it in a correct manner, that is still plagiarism. So what's the big deal? If you plagiarize, there are some things that can happen to you in the real world. So again, in the real world, everyday scenario, you could be expelled from college the very first time you plagiarize. You could lose your job. You can lose recommendations to another college or job, and you could be sued by the person's whose idea you borrowed. Borrowed is in quotation marks, but again, you're stealing someone else's work. So you need to cite and give credit for anyone else's work if it is not yours. And if you don't, it is considered plagiarism, and there are consequences. So instead of plagiarizing, what could you do? There are two choices that you have to keep from plagiarizing. The first choice is to use a direct quotation. Use the author's exact words in quotation marks. Do not make any changes and give the author's name after you quote that information. This keeps you from plagiarizing. This tells me that you did not write this part and that these are someone else's words. Secondly, your second choice, you can paraphrase. To do that, you would explain the main idea of something that you read. You would write completely in your own words to show that you understood that source. And then you will cite that source. So give credit to the person who originally wrote it. So how do you paraphrase? The first thing you need to do when you're paraphrasing is to read actively. And secondly, you would take notes. You want to stop after each paragraph and ask yourself, what did I just read? So if there are several paragraphs in the text that you are reading, stop after each and ask yourself, what did I just read? To make sure that you comprehend that information. Next, you would take notes and write a list of the main facts after each paragraph. You want to write only things that relate to the topic that you were given or the topic that you chose. And then do not use full sentences. Using fragments and portions of words helps to keep you from plagiarizing as well. Once you actively read and take notes, next you paraphrase. To paraphrase, put away the source information that you just wrote down. You want to write about what you read in your own words. To do that, pretend like you're explaining that information to a friend. And don't put anything in your paper that you don't understand. So if you don't understand it, don't include it. Because again, once you begin to put additional information into your paper, that can lead to plagiarism. After you paraphrase, you want to then cite your sources. You want to include the page number and the author's name, as in the example listed below. You would include the author's name first, followed by the page number, and include it in parentheses. If you don't have a page number, you would just include the author's name, enclosed in parentheses. If you don't have the author's name or the page number, you can use the page title, which in this case is population, but you would include it inside quotation marks and then enclose it in parentheses. And if you wanted to do that to cite your source, including the author and the page number, it would look like this. It says Americans throw away too much trash. For example, we created 245 million tons of trash in 2006. Our trash includes things like paper and food scraps that could be recycled or composted instead. As you can see in this example, in that second sentence, they cite the author and the page number that information was found in. So what if you wanted to use a quotation from a book or a website? You would put quotation marks around the author's words in your paper. So whatever the author stated, you would enclose that in quotation marks. You would put a citation after it, like this example. In 2006, about 245 million tons of trash were produced in the United States. That particular piece of information came directly from the author, so it is enclosed in quotation marks, and they still included the citation at the end, enclosed in a parentheses followed by a period. So this is how you would quote from a book or a website. Then you would introduce and explain your evidence in your own words. So after you have quoted, included a citation, you still have to go back and explain in your own words the evidence that you found. And this is an example of how that would look. As you can see, it says Americans create too much waste each year. According to the book Garbage and Recycling, in 2006, about 245 million tons of trash were produced in the United States. If we keep producing so many tons of trash each year, we will run out of space in the landfills, the places where we dump our garbage. As you can see in the blue, that is where they introduce the information that they are going to talk about, followed by their quotation, which is enclosed in quotes, and it follows with a citation, followed by their evidence, which was explained in their own words. After you have done that, don't forget to cite your sources. This just means that you are giving credit to the author and you make it easy for the reader to find your source. And when you're citing sources, it has two parts. You have a page at the end of your paper listing each source that you use. So it is called your works cited page. This is where you include all of the sources that you use. And you have a parenthetical citation, which would be included inside of your essay. This is where you use the author and the page number or the page title, if no author, right after the fact or the quote. So again, you have your works cited page and your parenthetical citation. Parenthetical citations could be seen in this example inside the parentheses. And the format again that we use for citing and quoting is the MLA format. We have all used the same format to write papers and list our sources at the end of papers. So we all have to use one cohesive and coherent format to write sources at the end of our papers. And that format is the MLA format. And in order to get the rules for how to cite your sources accurately, you would use an MLA handbook. Again, this is where they have a set of rules in order to accurately cite your sources. And why would we do this? Because you need help. Where you can go to get help to accurately cite your sources are Purdue OWL, MLA tutorials, and citation generators like Citation Machine and EasyBIB. We're now going to go over how you would cite your sources and how to find citation info in a website. If you will look, this is an example of how you do that. You have at the very top left corner your publisher, which is NASA, which stands for National Aeronautics and Space Administration, followed by your site title, and then you have the page title. How to find citation info on a website. If you wanted to find the date that this particular web page was published, you will scroll all the way down to the bottom of that web page, look at the bottom right or the bottom left, but in this case the bottom right hand corner of the screen, and it gives you the most completed date that you can use in your citation. And if you have no date, just put ND to indicate that there was no date listed in this web page. Some helpful hints when you are citing sources. You want to make sure that you include the page title or the site title. And please remember that these are different. Common to have no author. So it is common not to have an author. So if you don't have one, leave it out. All sites have a publisher. So you want to look for the organization that made the site. Publisher and site title. Sometimes your publisher and your site title may be the same. If you have to, delete the URL up at the top of the page, which is the .com, .gov, .edu, and go back to the home page. Not all sites will have a date. So like I said previously, if you do not have a date, use ND to indicate that there is no date if they don't have one. And again, you need the last updated date, not the copyright. Again, the last updated date and the copyright are completely different. So you will need the last updated date. And again, guys, that is all. If you have any questions, please feel free to come and ask at any time. I'm willing to help. Again, you're going to need to take notes off this information.